I love roguelites. Like my obsession with trading card games, roguelites hold a very much permanent place in my day-to-day gaming. I'm not quite sure where it all started or when this genre became such a big part of my gaming tastes, but I do know why I love it so much. I love the idea of having a game where I can play for 15 minutes and feel fulfilled, but equally play for hours and hours and still feel like I'm getting that same fulfillment. Games like The Binding of Isaac, Enter the Gungeon, and Nuclear Throne, to name some of my favorites, are some of my most played games simply due to the fact that they are games that allow me to take breaks with whatever I'm doing. The procrastinator's best friend. I can be scripting or editing a video, play a run that could last 10 minutes or an hour, get that thrill and gaming therapy, and then get back to work. This is really all my 2021 has consisted of thus far, except, well, as you can probably tell, I haven't been uploading as many videos as I would have liked. That's because for the most part this year, I've just been cycling between playing Magic the Gathering Arena and The Binding of Isaac, and I haven't had any real urge to play much more than that due to, well, the stress of getting married. Now, all of this fluffing has a point. Whilst I was in a state of anxiousness, a developer reached out with a roguelite that I've been keeping my eye on for some time now, and honestly, I thought it would be the perfect addition to this seemingly never-ending cycle of Isaac and Magic, and get me back to actually making videos. Which brings me to today. The stress of a wedding is finally over, and whilst my urge to play more games is back in full swing, I thought I first needed to go over my thoughts on a game that utterly absorbed me for a good 40 hours in just over a week. Welcome to So I Finally Played Nova Drift. Once again, I received Nova Drift via a reviewed copy. I am so grateful to you all for putting me in this sort of a position, but I cannot state this enough. My thoughts and opinions are my own, and free or not doesn't affect my opinion, as I'm not going to play or even recommend you all a game unless I feel in my heart it deserves your attention. Alright, with the formalities done and dusted, let's actually talk about Nova Drift. There's no story, by the way, so this video is all about that gameplay. So I don't think this video needs a spoiler warning unless you care about not seeing the higher waves or something like that. Nova Drift is a classic arcade style space shooter roguelite. That's a mouthful.
Title of your sex tape.
And really, you're just trying to make it through as many waves as possible, getting as many points as you can, and getting a new high score. That's the arcade style shooter aspect to a T. But where does the roguelite factor in exactly? Well, you'll be gaining experience and leveling up from different enemies or bosses, and you use these levels to initially pick your weapons, shields, and ship build before moving on to selecting any number of randomized mods to increase any number of attributes for your ship, weapons, shields, health, etc. There is also a further roguelite aspect with the Wild Metamorphosis game mode, with randomized one-off mods as well. Now, I'll delve a little deeper into the gameplay in just a second, but first I need to talk about Nova Drift's controls. Within just the first few minutes of your first run with Nova Drift, you're going to notice that it doesn't control how you'd expect. If you're like me, you may assume that Nova Drift uses a twin stick style of movement. I mean, I did because Nova Drift was giving me heavy Geometry Wars vibes from my research before playing the game. But you'd be wrong. Instead of using one stick to move and one to shoot, in Nova Drift, where you aim is both where you'll shoot and move, and at least for me, it took a little while to get used to. Going so far as initially I did wish there was an option to change these controls, as twin sticks is what I would have been more comfortable with, but I grew to really appreciate Nova Drift's movement just as much because it has that added element of strategy about it. With a twin stick shooter, you can zip around and fire in separate directions, making for a more fast-paced arcade shooter. But because in Nova Drift the aiming is tied to really your only two functions, means that whilst you want to move around as much as you possibly can, there is going to be times where you more or less need to just tap on the thrusters whilst you try and zip your aim around, destroying any enemies or hazards. Again, these controls can take you a while to nail down, and I'd recommend messing around with the control options to find what makes you most comfortable, whether that be mouse and keyboard, or controller, different bindings, whatever makes you feel comfortable. But really, the more you play, the more you'll be able to pick up on how to move and shoot effectively. Now with the controls out of the way, back to what you actually do in Nova Drift. The big selling point, in my opinion, for Nova Drift is much like any other roguelite, and that is no run will feel the same as another. Synergy is a big component in the roguelite genre, but it takes a while to figure out what items work best together and what items actually make your run worse. That doesn't mean there is necessarily bad items though, and I'll give you an example. I love to select weapons with a wide range, such as the flak cannon or the salvo missiles, and so selecting a mod like volley is a big help for said weapons. But if I was to choose the railgun for instance, then I don't want to pick that mod because then I'm losing that laser focus. The same can be said for ship types or shields. It's all about finding mods and upgrades that synergize together, and really the only way you'll learn what helps and what hinders you is by playtesting. The items aren't all Nova Drift has to spice up each run though, as the more you play, the more you unlock new ships, weapons and mod trees, as well as new gameplay modifiers that can change what wave you start on, give you more high level enemies or more obstacles, that sort of thing. And the more of these mods you have enabled, the more points you'll get, the higher your score, and the more experience you'll get to unlock more ships, weapons, and gameplay mods. These gameplay modifiers are a great inclusion because you always feel like you can get better at the game, and the better you get with harder mods, the higher the score could potentially be. And again, it just helps change each run even further, even if you begin to find specific builds you like to strive for each playthrough. Like me, personally, I like to amass an army of drones to try and do some crowd control with a weapon that shoots every which way, like a tank build with my own little army, and maybe a shield that disintegrates smaller enemies just by being near me. But that's personal preference. You may like being a battering ram or a more precise shooter. Use your shield as a weapon. It's just what you personally enjoy, and if a specific upgrade or choice isn't available to you, you can always just re-roll your choices. Nova Drift is also a really exciting and visually pleasing experience. Shit goes sideways quick if you can't control the crowd effectively. Waves blend into each other. Bosses blend into normal waves. Enemies can cover the screen and then mix in asteroids, meteor showers, and singularities. Yeah, it's intense, and especially with my tank build, don't even try outrunning the singularities, you're going in. But this mayhem feels so incredible to either avoid or destroy everything on screen in a matter of seconds. Visually, they also made space really unique and interesting. There is a lot of colors, not just a black void, and with planets it makes the background pop. But the enemies never get lost into it, and the addition of planets and new backgrounds makes you feel like you're going somewhere and progressing. There is a lot of choice in Nova Drift, and it's a really addictive time to play around with all the options you have available, even when the waves and bosses don't change all that much. If I had one criticism about Nova Drift, it is the waves and bosses themselves, but more so the bosses, as you can apply mods to mix up the enemies, but the bosses, not so much. You'll face the same bosses over and over again, and whilst you do get to a point of knowing how strong your build is, depending on the boss, through many fights, there is so much variety elsewhere that the boss's lack of it is extremely noticeable. Look, there is a lot of detail you can delve into for Nova Drift, and I feel like I'm almost just scratching the surface, but because Nova Drift is still in early access, I think I'll save some details for a potential follow-up review once everything is in the game, which, by the roadmap, looks to only add further and further value to this already really amazing product, such as improved bosses and more of them, daily challenges, more items, ships, weapons, new enemies, a finale or endgame for those who seek it, console ports, etc. I don't usually talk about titles in early access, and I was a little skeptical initially to review Nova Drift because of it, but the core of Nova Drift is worth the price of admission today. If you enjoy a good roguelite or arcade style shooter, I can't see any reason why you wouldn't enjoy yourself here in Nova Drift. And even if you wait until the game has fully released, if nothing else, I want this game to be on your radar and keep an eye on it. I've currently played Nova Drift for over 40 hours and I plan to be playing this game a lot more, and I highly recommend you do the same. Thank you so much for watching. I just wanted to pop in here at the end to say thank you all so much for the congratulations and support for my wife and I. She is amazed at how supportive this community is, and I just wanted to tell you all that you're awesome and I'm so grateful for you all. With that stress and anxiety finally off my shoulders though, we're getting right back in the swing of things here on the channel. This video was obviously unexpected due to, well, not expecting to play the game, but I'm excited to get more and more videos out to you all, hopefully with more regularity. Again, thank you all so much, and I'll see you next time with a new retrospective. Have a good one.